Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm your host, and today we're putting on our diagnostic hats to tackle one of the most common yet kind of deeply misunderstood household annoyances. Seriously, if you've ever stood at your bathroom vanity just watching a pool of murky water stubbornly refuse to go down the drain, you know exactly what we're dealing with today. We're going to examine the science and the mechanics of your bathroom sink's pop-up stopper. Okay, let's dive into this.
We've all been there, right? You're brushing your teeth, you turn off the tap, and instead of that swift, satisfying swirl of water disappearing down the drain, you get this slow, agonizingly sluggish drain. And then comes that unmistakable, slightly gross sound, the gurgle. Oh, it's incredibly frustrating. You might immediately think, oh no, I've got a massive, deep pipe plumbing disaster on my hands. But hey, hold off on calling the heavy-duty plumbers just yet. Why is your sink actually gurgling? Well, the truth is usually hiding right in plain sight. The culprit is highly likely your pop-up stopper mechanism. We tend to think of sink clogs as these deep, mysterious blockages somewhere in the dark walls of our house. But bathroom sinks, they're unique. They come equipped with this incredibly convenient but remarkably complex little piece of machinery right at the surface. When this pop-up mechanism stops working like it's supposed to, it's rarely just an ordinary clog. It's actually a mechanical interference. By shifting our attention away from the deep pipes and focusing right on the stopper itself, we can actually solve the majority of these drainage headaches ourselves. So here's our treatment plan for today's explainer. Number 1, identifying a stopper problem. Number 2, the usual clog culprits. Number 3, simple fixes and restoration. Number 4, when to remove assembly. And finally, number 5, preventing future sink clogs. Let's jump right into section 1, identifying a stopper problem. Diagnosing the symptoms. Now, when we're diagnosing a sink issue, we really have to look for clues that go way beyond just standing water. While water draining slowly or backing up is the classic sign, you need to pay close attention to the tactile feedback your sink is giving you. For instance, does the plug refuse to raise smoothly? When you pull the rod, does the stopper movement feel, gritty or resistant? Maybe you pull it up and the stopper just drops right back down on its own. Or perhaps you've got an inconsistent seal, where the water seems to drain, but then you notice a slow trickle leaking through, even when it's supposedly closed tight. These are all definitive symptoms that buildup is actively interfering with the stopper mechanism, the rubber, or the metal surfaces. And this brilliantly illustrates how to figure out if you're the right doctor for the job. If you're dealing with a localized issue, meaning the clog is happening in just one bathroom sink, your diagnosis is pretty clear. The problem points directly to the stopper assembly and the nearby trap. You can absolutely handle this. However, if multiple fixtures in your bathroom are draining poorly all at once, say your sink, your shower, and your toilet, warning signs should be flashing. That points to a broader plumbing issue, like a venting problem or a massive downstream blockage. That's when you really need professional intervention. But if it's just the one sink, we're good to keep moving forward with our treatment. Moving right along to section 2, the usual clog culprits, what's under the hood. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing exactly what causes this localized interference. It's essentially an unholy sticky alliance down there. It always starts with hair and lint, which basically acts like a physical filter, catching everything else that goes by. Then you introduce soap scum and toothpaste residue. Those don't just wash away smoothly. They form this thick, sticky film right on the hair. And that sticky film, it acts as an anchor for hard water minerals to grow on. We also have to consider mechanical failure, like linkage misalignment, which can easily happen if the plumbing shifted or if someone previously tried to clean it and didn't re-engage the rod perfectly. All of this chaos happens exactly at the choke point where the stopper meets the drain throat. This sticky alliance builds into a much bigger problem when we introduce our next concept, mineral scale. If you live in an area with hard water, your water contains high levels of calcium and magnesium. Over time, these minerals deposit onto the components of your pop-up stopper, creating this rough, sandpaper-like coating. Let me tell you, this scale is an absolute nightmare for drainage. Why? Because instead of debris sliding cleanly past smooth metal or plastic, it now snags on this rough coating. Mineral scale dramatically accelerates how fast clogs form, completely turning what was a minor hair issue into a rigid, stuck blockage that stops your stopper from sealing or opening properly. Let's get into fixing this. Section 3. Simple fixes and restoration, the treatment plan. All right, let's walk through this clinical 4-step treatment plan to safely restore your sink's flow. Step 1 is to remove the visible debris from above. Depending on your sink model, you can often just unscrew or lift the pop-up cap right out. Just wipe away the hair and gunk you can easily reach. Step 2, clear the drain below the stopper.
Grab a flexible drain brush designed for sinks. It is absolutely critical here to avoid forcing hard metal tools down the drain because those will severely scratch and damage your sink basin, and nobody wants that. Step 3 tackles that sticky film and scale. Apply an appropriate drain cleaner, a descaling agent, or even a simple vinegar-based soak directly to the metal and rubber contact points. Let it sit and break down that calcium and soap scum, then scrub it with a soft brush. Finally, step 4, check the linkage under the sink. Make sure the rod isn't bent, tighten any loose fasteners, and lightly lubricate the mechanism so it moves smoothly again.
I really want to pause here for a second because this is incredibly important if you're executing step 4. If your manufacturer allows you to lubricate the linkage, you must only use a plumber-safe, silicone-based product. You have to actively avoid heavy greases. If you use a heavy grease, you're basically painting a fresh layer of glue onto your plumbing. That heavy grease will immediately start trapping lint, hair, and toothpaste all over again, and you'll have accidentally created a much worse, much stickier clog than you started with. So remember, keep it silicone-based and keep it light.
Sometimes we have to go a bit deeper. Section 4, when to remove assembly. Time for surgery.
We have to acknowledge that sometimes simple cleaning just isn't enough, and we need to take the parts completely out for a deep, direct clean. Step 1 of this surgical process is to get under the sink and detach the linkage from the top of the rod. Step 2, undo the mounting nut or retaining ring that holds the assembly into the bottom of the sink basin. Once that's free, step 3 is the actual removal. You can pull the stopper body completely out. This allows you to directly clean the interior surfaces of the drain opening, which is exactly where the most stubborn buildup likes to hide. Finally, step 4 is reinstallation. You have to do this very carefully to ensure the plug remains perfectly centered and the linkage is properly aligned so the rod actually catches the stopper eyelet.
So the crucial point here is this extreme word of caution. Pop-up assemblies use different mechanisms depending on the brand, and especially in older bathrooms, these metal connections can become severely corroded. If you're under the sink twisting that mounting nut and the parts simply won't come free without using excessive heavy force, you need to stop. Seriously, do not force it. If you torque a corroded metal nut too hard, you run a very real risk of cracking the porcelain or ceramic sink basin entirely or permanently destroying the plumbing threads. At that point, it's just much cheaper and safer to call a professional plumber.
Which brings us to our final phase, Section 5, preventing future sink clogs, preventative care. Here are the easy daily and weekly habits that will break the vicious stuck plug cycle before it even has a chance to harden into scale. First off, if your setup allows for it, definitely use a hair catcher. Next, simply wiping the drain rim regularly stops a ton of debris from ever entering the throat. Also, be mindful of what you wash down there. Avoid rinsing massive, thick globs of toothpaste or heavy soap directly into the stopper. Remember, your sink is not a trash can. Every few weeks, take a flexible brush and do a quick 2-minute mechanical clean while running warm water. That breaks up the sticky film before it hardens. And if you're in a hard water home, make it a habit to periodically descale the stopper seal area. Just a few minutes of proactive maintenance literally saves you hours of gross plumbing disassembly down the road.
So, we've covered the symptoms, the gross culprits, the clinical fixes, and the preventative care required to totally master your bathroom sink stopper. But I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Is your sink trying to tell you something before it completely stops draining? Next time you feel a little gritty resistance when you pull the stopper, or you hear a faint gurgle as the water goes down, don't ignore it. That is your sink begging for a quick 5-minute cleaning before the scale hardens and the real blockage sets in. Catch it early, use the right tools, and keep things flowing smoothly. Thank you so much for joining me today on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.